Hi there, I'm Jackson Felden. On this video is going to be all about data protection. I want to show how you can use Microsoft Information Protection on Microsoft 365 to protect files and emails. Protection in this case, I'm talking about we can control who can print files or emails, who can forward emails, who can take screenshots and make changes as well. And the beauty of that is this additional layer travels with the files. It doesn't matter if the file is saved in a local storage or on Google, let's say Google Cloud or Microsoft Cloud or so on. Initially, I have a few slides just to kind of set the foundation, and then I will show the end user experience when working with files and working with protected files. And then I will show the 3 steps how you can do the implementation. The first one is get a good understanding on the sensitive info types, and then how you can create the labels, and finally how you can publish the labels for the end users. And of course, at the very end, you need to understand how you can have a good visibility of all the labels your users are basically using, and you can track as well who are the people out there reading the protected files. Anyway, let's get started and let me show all the steps. Before jumping into my demos, let me do a quick intro on Microsoft Information Protection in Microsoft 365. This is a set of tools that helps organizations to discover, to classify, and protect sensitive information. Basically, there are 4 pillars. The first one, and very important, I would say, is to understand the data landscape. Is basically to understand where the data is. Local file servers on the Microsoft 365, Azure Storage, Google Drive, Dropbox, and so on. The second, and that's the main subject for my presentation today, is all about applying encryption, applying protection, and applying as well visual marking. I will come back to this subject in the next slide. The next one is all about the data loss prevention. That's, for example, to avoid any user by accident or maybe on purpose to send sensitive information via email or maybe, from the Teams chat box, or sharing a file from OneDrive or SharePoint. And the last one is all about data govern. In this case, to set basically policies that will automatically delete files when they reach 1 year old, or we could do the opposite as well to make sure the files and key emails are kept in the organization at least for 7 years to kind of cope with the compliance, and then after 7 years they could be auto-deleted. Okay, before we move on, very important here is to understand. I got this data from Microsoft a while ago. As you can see, 48% of the workers have accidentally shared sensitive information with the wrong person. That's pretty much scary, if we think. This is why it's so important for us to apply security, apply encryption. In this case, if somebody by accident shares information with an unauthorized person, it's not a big deal because that user won't be able to open the file and to kind of, retrieve the content. Okay, the next one quickly here for me to explain is basically 2 things I need to focus on. First, when we are talking about applying visual markings in protection, that can be done manually or can be done automatically. Mainly it depends on your license. By the time I'm recording this video, if your organization has Azure Information Protection P1, and then eventually the users must be doing the labeling manually. As you can see in here, every time when the users are working with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, those files, they will see the sensitivity button, and then from there, all the labels that were basically shared with them. In this case, I have a couple of them. Okay, let's say the user is dealing here with a kind of basic file, it doesn't hold any sensitive information, and then we need to teach the users to say, oh yeah, in this case, make sure you select the Contoso unrestricted, file, and is basically 1 click, job done. And eventually, if the users are working with some credit card details, and then I need again to teach the user for them manually to come here and just, tick the box. Okay, if you think that, doesn't work well, and then we can jump into the auto labeling. In this case, you need to have Azure Information Protection P2, build the labels, as I will show you in a few minutes. And then the beauty of that is the system will be able to detect the patterns, in this case to identify a credit card or laser card details. Here it's not too complicated. And then thanks to the right configuration, the system will do two things. First, add the marking, okay, in this case just a kind of watermark, and then the most important, to apply the label. And basically the way I have configured that label means to encrypt the file and allow access only for some people. In my case, I've chosen a single department that will have full access. It means they can change, they can print, they can forward emails, and so on. But the rest of the organization, they have only read-only access. It means no print, no screenshot, no forwarding, no sharing, pretty much nothing. Only, they can read. That's thanks to the auto configuration. And the last decision as well is if you want only to add a watermark like this, maybe you are not looking really to encrypt the data, but just to make visible for the users, now they are working on a client's contract, or now they are working in a, payment information, and so on. Nothing will happen with the file, only you are adding a visual mark. And the last one, this is, part of my demo, is to basically do the data protection. As I already said, the file will be fully encrypted, and then unless you have the right permission, you won't be able to open the file at all, or you will be able to only open and read, no print, no, all of those things I already said. Okay, in order to build that, the first thing is very important, I would say. Everything lies on top of the sensitive info types. By the time I'm recording this video, there are already 250, 260 built-in info types. In this case, they help you to detect pattern. For anybody in Ireland, it's going to be based on the PPS number, Irish passport numbers, and so on. For guys in the UK, driver license, passport numbers, and all of those things. And of course, there are other specific info type for American, Canada, Australia, and so on. But the beauty is, eventually, when you build, I will show in a few seconds how you can build the custom info type. But when you have your sensitive info types, let's say, configured, and you're happy with that, you can use them to auto-classification, that's part of my demo, content search, e-discovery, data loss prevention, data protection, part of my demo here as well. Defender for cloud app, is included. And as quickly I said, there are so many templates ready to go. If you need something different, no problem at all, you can use your own custom information type. I'm sorry, everybody is kind of tired of COVID-19. I just wanted to get something relevant. This is exactly the text I got, for my vaccine. And then what I did is, if I look, there is a pattern, we always start with COVID-19 and then appointment number, when and where, and the vaccine type. What I did is I just manually created a custom information in here, adding exactly those kind of set of key information. It means, thanks to my configuration, thanks to the label and the policy I will show on the upcoming minutes, anytime the system detects a file that contains that pattern, a file or an email, the system is able to automatically to classify that information, file or email, and add a visual marking as well. On my lab, I didn't add any encryption, but the system will be able to detect that via the custom info type. Okay, this is why stick with the video, make sure you understand how it works, and that's the kind of step number one when you are designing your data protection. Okay guys, that's pretty much, for a quick theory. Now let me jump into my demos where I will show in action all of those things I just said. Okay, now let me first show what is the user experience, how the encryption really works for the end user, and then finally I will show how to implement the policy. Okay, here I am in one of my virtual machines playing a user called Alex, and then let's say Alex is going to create a file that matches with the COVID policy I already created. Okay, let me just copy this content in here. It's pretty much the same appointment I just showed to you a few seconds ago. Okay, now Alex on his kind of day-to-day is about to write an email or maybe save this information, in my case, in a Word document. Okay, let me say here a COVID-19 appointment. The name really doesn't matter. Okay, that's fine. And then eventually now, when this user saves, whatever is when the user save whatever is the content, okay, in this case, my policy is always looking for the pattern. Let me just make a little bit, bigger in here. Okay, always for the pattern that is appointment number, when is the appointment, where is the appointment, and so on. The system should be able to catch that information automatically, and then based on my policy, will add the watermark and do the encryption, or maybe only encrypt, or maybe, only add the watermark. If you don't have the right license that allows the auto labeling, basically the user can always do the labeling manually. Okay, in this case, I have a couple of labels already created: highly confidential, credit card, Irish driver license, and those names. But anyway, I haven't clicked on anything. Now everything looks fine, no problem. But when the user, finally saves that file, clicking there, not doing anything else. Yeah, now two things happened thanks to my policy. First of all, okay, it added basically the watermark, just whatever the text I wanted. In this case, I've set as COVID-19 appointment. And then here on the top as well, the system just inform the file, the content has been auto labeled. Now if I click on file and then eventually click on info, yeah, in this case, the document actually is not protected. And, it's not really a big thing in my kind of, lab. It's not a big thing. And I decided not to encrypt this file, but I really wanted to add a watermark. Okay, that's my first example. Okay, that's fine. My second example, let's play with the credit cards. Okay, let me get in here. I think this is the file. Yeah, that's kind of too many. Let me get a single one here. Okay, this actually is one of my old card. Okay, that's already expired. The number is already expired. I just tweak here the expiration date. Anyway, again, now I'm using another info type that detects any pattern to identify those credit card details. Same story. If the end user is about to create any file, let me just stick again. Let's call credit card from my company called Contoso. Oops, there's a file already there. The file really doesn't matter. Anyway, let's keep the default name. Click in there, same story. Now let me just paste the content. Again, the end user could be labeling this file automatically, but in this case, let me again click on save, and then the magic now happened. In this case, the system was able to identify these kind of matched with a credit card, and then this is why I have now a different watermark. And now, in addition for the watermark, I decided throughout my policy to protect this file as well. Okay, now a kind of easy way for me to show is, let me close this file and open it up again. Now I can check my permissions, and then of course I'm playing here a user called Alex, and then the user itself has full permissions, to view the file, to edit the file, to copy, to do absolutely everything, because this user belongs to my, let's say, finance department. Any other user that belongs to my organization will have only a permission to read the file, and anybody outside of my tenant doesn't have permission at all. Okay, that's basically what's happened for the moment. Let me save this file. It's all good. Now let me show in my second virtual machine what's happened when a user with not full permissions get access to one of those files. Okay, let's say this file was sent by mistake, or arrived to my user called now Diego. When Diego open up that file. Okay, again, because Diego belongs to my organization, is not a problem for Diego to read the content. Okay, as you can see, Diego has no problem in reading the content. When Diego tries, just trying to type here, change things, it doesn't work. If Diego tries to save the file to another location, it's not possible. Print the file is not possible. Attach the file and send via email, it doesn't work. And because the file is protected. Another interesting thing I can try to do in here, basically, let's say Diego really wants to send this content, away, needs to share this content to a different person. If Diego eventually, okay, let me get a snip from that information. Click in here, and when, Diego tries to use the snip tool or any other screenshot tool, looks what's happened. Click in here, and yeah, like magic, I'm not able to basically take a screenshot from that information. If Diego are one of those guys, who never gives up, okay, let me try now shift print screen. Okay, yeah, just took a shift print screen. If I try to paste in any other place, as you can see, the information is protected. As I told you before, of course, I could get my mobile, take a picture, then there is no protection, for that. But anyway, this is what the end user will face in case the user doesn't have permissions to print, to share, to save, to send via email, and so on. And if I would try, a different user who doesn't belong to this organization at all, and then the user wouldn't be able even to open the file. Okay, when the user tries to open the file, the system, verify the credentials. The user doesn't have the credential, is not listed into the permissions, and the user doesn't have access at all. It doesn't matter the beauty of this. It doesn't matter if this file is on OneDrive, is on the local device, is on my mobile phone, is on Google Drive. It really doesn't matter, because the protection basically travels with the file, wherever the files go. Anyway, that's the beauty of the data protection from a kind of end user point of view. Now, finally, let me show what I have done in order to build this configuration in terms of data protection. Okay, basically the place to start, if you are kind of new on here, the place to start here on the top is just make sure you go to the compliance.microsoft.com. Okay, and then from there are a couple of things for us to do. As quickly I presented on my slide, the first place to go is to the data classification. Click in there, and the foundation for you to build all the policy or the policies really starts from the sensitive info types. Okay, now let me show you the two elements I used in order to build my policy. There are a couple of steps in here. Step number one, to use a built-in sensitive info type or to configure your own sensitive info type. Second, to configure the labels. Third, basically to publish those labels to the end user. And then finally, the end user is able to kind of, use the labels based on what I just, showed. Okay, let's have a look now. If I click on the sensitive info types, I should be able to see in a few seconds is loading 200, by the time I'm recording this video, as you can see, I would say 260 plus, some of them I already created. And, some very traditional here are the, if I try, let's say a credit card, there is a built-in policy to identify any credit card number. And then I could try, stick with some countries. Okay, why not to try Ireland? And then I should be able to see a couple of, specific built-in policies for Ireland, like to identify passport numbers, to identify, the PPS number, and so on. If I go for, I think is U.K, I could get some specific templates here now for the guys in the UK. Again, driver license, physical addresses and national insurance numbers and so on. And the same story for Australia, for Brazil, Canada, and so many other countries. Okay, where the, the pattern to identify those information is ready to go. But of course, as I said before, you could end up building your own configuration. And then to build a configuration, let me show what I did. It's pretty much simple. Just make sure you click over the create sensitive info type, click in there, and then a wizard will start. And then from here, you have the option to add, whatever the pattern you are using. Okay, let me just quickly show in here. Okay, next. And then, okay, I need to have a proper name. Okay, COVID-19 001, because I already created one. Anyway, okay, that's fine. Then click on, sorry, it's not a name, it's a description. Sorry, I forgot the description. Sometimes, we need to read the message. Okay, sorry about that. Click on next. Okay, and then finally, here is the place where I can create a pattern, and then the elements, we can create. Click in here, and then I could add regular expression or just, a list of keywords. This is exactly what I did when I added the keywords like, appointment number, the where and when, I added in here, and there are other regular expression you can use as well. And then just follow the wizard. Just to buy a bit of time, let me show what I did. If I click in here, and another thing as well, I had to create my info type in advanced, because when you create the info type, it takes a couple of minutes in order for the info type to be available after a kind of internal replication, and then eventually you are able to start creating the labels. This is why, to buy a bit of time, I already created the info type to be able to later on show the labels. Anyway, this is what I did. And then if I click in here, let me just quickly click on edit. Just a second in here. Yeah, click on edit. And now finally, let me show what I did. Anyway, whatever the name you want, and then a short description. Click on next. And then here is the most important, where you add one or a couple of patterns. In my case, I added one. And pretty much, very simple what I did is I decided to add a couple of keywords. And then if I click in here, the keywords I added are exactly, the system will be looking for COVID-19, appointment number, when, where, in vaccine type. Any file, any email, whatever the information sits, when the system finds those pattern, and then the system is able to auto, let's say, classify that information by adding label or adding protection. But this is only step number one, okay? The info type is created. If I kind of, stop all my configuration now, nothing happens. I have the pattern, but now I need to create a label, and then I need to publish, that label. Anyway, step number one is done, okay? Make sure you identify whatever are the info types, the built-in you could use, or if it doesn't suit you, you can always create from the scratch. Step number one. Step number two, now we need to create the label. And then the place to go is over the information protection. Okay, click in there. Again, here you create different labels based on different info types. Okay, if I click on labels, I already created, to make sure by the time I wanted to record this video, the information was all replicated and ready to go. I created a couple of info types called COVID-19 label, the credit card label, the Irish driver license, and a couple of things I want the system to identify automatically, or I want to give the user the possibility to do the manual label as well. Okay, I could again click on create a label and then just fill out the wizard. Or let me show exactly what I did, just to reflect with the end user experience I already showed you. Okay, if I click on the COVID-19 label, let me just edit this label. It's not too complicated, to be honest. Same story now on the label. Make sure you have a name and then a quick, description for the end user. You could have a different description for administrator. Okay, that's fine. Click on next. Now here is, okay, where you want to use this label. Okay, for the moment I want to stick only for files and emails, but we could extend for groups, okay, and sites and some data assets as well. Okay, let me concentrate on files and emails. Click on next, and then now a couple of decisions here you need to take. As I told you before, we have two options. What I did, no, I don't really want to encrypt the data. I just want to kind of add a visual mark on that file, just to make sure the user, when working with those files, the user know, oh yeah, this is a client, a customer contract. Oh yeah, this is the credit card details and so on. Okay, and then I will show later on how to encrypt. Okay, for this label, for my COVID-19, I decided not to encrypt, but I just wanted to add the visual mark. Okay, that's fine. This is why I picked that option. Then clicked on next. Now is the time when you decide if you want to add a watermark or add, whatever the text on the header or as a footer. I decided to add, as you saw a few seconds ago, on the watermark. And then I can always click on customize, and then finally here is the place where you can add whatever the text you want. I decided to just stick COVID-19 appointment. I can decide the font size, the color, and how I want to present the text. Pretty much very simple. Okay, click on next. Now, very important. Okay, very important. If you have the right license, okay, and then you can stick with the auto labeling. What's happened with a quick demo a few seconds ago. By the time the system identifies the information about my COVID appointment number, when, where, and type of vaccine, thanks to the configuration, the system will be able to add to classify the file automatically, thanks to the sensitive info type. Okay, here is the place where, what I had to do for the, my configuration is here already. But what I did was really simple. I just had to click on add, just click on add. Okay, now I can pick sensitive info type, what I showed you before, or I could use a trainable classifier. Okay, a trainable classifier basically is the way you can kind of, teach the system, thanks to the machine learning, to identify some patterns. Let me give you a 1 minute example. Let's say you have a folder or on SharePoint with, 200 clients contract. Using the trainable classifier, when you are building the trainable classifier, you point to that folder that contains those, let's say, 200 clients a contract, and then the system takes usually 7 days to go over every single file to identify the internal pattern, and then from there the system will create a new, in this case, trainable classifier, where you can use to auto-identify and auto-classify your information. I need to record another video to give you all the steps to do the configuration. But for now, let me stick with the sensitive info type. And then I just had to basically, select the info type. And then I came here and I just, had to search by my COVID info type that was there. And then I just selected next, job done. Okay, this is why a few seconds ago I said the sensitive info type is so important for you to understand and be able to configure if you want to deal with the data classification and the data protection as well. Okay, that's pretty much what I did, and then next. Now again I have the option, if I had selected before, I could apply this pattern to identify COVID information on groups and other assets as well. Okay, in my case, let me just skip. Now let me click on next. Same story here on data assets. It's not my case. Let me go. And guys, that's pretty much it. Okay, now this is step number 2. Sensitive info types were created. I created now a label, but the problem is if you stop right now, not going to happen, okay, because the label won't be published to the end users, and this, the end users won't be able to do anything. When you are happy with the labels, and the next step is to create the policies. Before creating the policies, let me just quickly show what I did on my credit card label, that in addition of adding a visual mark, I decided to encrypt the data as well. Let me show this policy. Okay, if I click in there, same story. Let me click on edit the label. The beginning is always the same. I added a display name, description, that's all good. Let me go to next. Again, I decided to stick only with files and emails. Click on next. Now, very important, okay? I really don't want any, let's say, credit card details, company credit card details, to be, as a normal file where anybody could print, send via email, take screenshots, and so on. This is why I decided to encrypt the content. Next. Okay, now very important in here is, we could use a policy or a label, sorry, to remove encryption, but in this case I want to, add encryption. Okay, and basically I want to assign permissions. As I think quickly I told you before, okay, the legal team will have a co-owner permission. It means they can do anything. Change the file, print, forward, take a screenshot, they can do pretty much anything. Anybody else in my own organization will only be able to view. This is what's happened with Diego. Diego actually could read the file, but Diego couldn't take screenshot, couldn't print, couldn't save, couldn't, send forward via email or so on. And just to show how you can add permissions is here, just click on add permissions, and then you need to pick what the permission you are looking for. I could say in here, maybe let's go for a custom, and then really granular to say, oh yeah, some people I want to be able to edit, I want to, maybe save the file as well. I'm not going to read anything, you got it. These are the built-in permissions. We can, let me just random get some in here, click on save. And of course, now we have the option to assign these permissions to all my organization or to a very specific domain or email address. Let's say we are doing business with a company, called, let's say, Contoso, and then of course we need the guys from the Contoso company to be able to read and maybe print our emails in files, nothing else. Yeah, no problem at all. I could click in here and then eventually add whole domain, like anything at contoso.com, or only, let's say Susan at contoso.com. Anyway, that's the place where we can add the permissions. Another important thing as well is we could actually specify a file, content expiration date to say, we are working a tender, and then eventually after, 3 months, I want those files to be, let's say, not as accessible anymore. Okay, and then I could say here, specify a date or maybe a number of days after when the label is applied, let's say 30 days. After 30 days, again, the beauty is it doesn't matter where the file is, Google Drive, Gmail, it really doesn't matter. After 30 days, the file will be pretty much, gone. Okay, and very important as well, if I want my users to work with those protected files offline, maybe they don't have internet for a couple of hours or so on. If you really want to play safe like me, I decided never. It means every time when a user tries to open a file, the system goes, to Microsoft, do the permissions verification, and then the user will be able to, work with the files or not. But I could say here, maybe let's allow 1 day or 2 days or so on. Then after 2 days of no verification, no internet access, then the user will lose access until the verification is possible. But, to play safe, I would say never. Okay, very important. I want to assign permissions. Here are the permissions I just assigned, or the permissions that will be assigned when the users are working with credit card details. and I don't want to set an expiration date, and I don't want to allow any offline, access. Okay, happy with that. Click on next. Now it's pretty much what I already explained. I wanted to add a watermark, okay, and then this is why I just decided to add Contoso credit card, whatever the size and so on. And that's pretty much it. The other bits are the same from the previous policy. Yeah, here is exactly what I did. I created, first time I click on add, and then I selected the Microsoft built-in credit card number. Again, could be, any sensitive info type. Clicked on next. Yeah, everything else is exactly, exactly the same what I told you before. Okay, that's good. One more time, if I would stop my configuration now, nothing happens, okay? The users, they won't see the label, no auto labeling, nothing. Now the next step is basically for us to publish those labels for whatever the users we want. The beauty of here is I could create different labels and then eventually publish a set of labels only for the guys from the legal department, another set of labels for the IT and marketing, another set of labels for sales, and so on. In my case, I decided to have a single policy for all my organization. Then, first time I clicked on published label, just clicked in there, and then I followed the wizard. Again, just to buy a bit of time, let me show what I already did. When I click in there, single policy, click on edit policy. Okay, here is the place where I can kind of, add and remove the labels. For a kind of enterprise organization, we could end up having dozens or maybe hundreds of labels, and then we can decide, which label will be assigned to, what kind of users. Anyway, I decided to add highly confidential, credit card details, Irish, and so on. Okay, that's fine. Next is basically to decide, what are the users who will get those labels. Again, to play safe, I would say to play safe, just to kind of keep simple. Sorry, that's the right way to say. I decided to keep, a single policy for all my users. But again, I could spread different labels to different users via different policies. Okay, that's fine. Next, kind of, important screen, important option in here. Every time when the user are changing the labels, I think I didn't tell you yet. Yeah, I can, allow or not the users to change labels. Oh yeah, this is not a credit card details. This is a driver license or, whatever. But and then the user needs to provide a justification as well. I could force everybody to apply a label. Okay, eventually if the system is not able to auto-detect a pattern from an email or file, and then if I click this option, yeah, the user won't be able to send an email, the user won't be able to save a file unless, the guys go there and pick whatever, the label that suits the information. Okay, and then same story, I could publish this as well for Power BI content and some other options as well. For now, I decided just to stick with a justification. Click on the next. Okay, very important now, if you want to decide, if you want to apply a default label, eventually just to avoid the users to pick a label, if the system can't auto-detect a pattern, and then maybe let's set as a maybe Contoso unrestricted content. Okay, you could do that as well. In my case, I decided no, I don't want to apply any label by default. Okay, that's for documents. Same story. If I want to apply a default label for emails, and now same story, a default label for Power BI, and that's pretty much it. Okay, anyway, that was the way I have implemented my lab. First of all, create an info type, and then I created the labels, and then I grouped those labels into the policies, and then throughout the policies, I publish those policies to the user. Okay, and then finally, to finish off this video, usually the question I ask is, okay, how do I know what are the users and what are the policies, they are really using? No problem at all. The place to answer that question is I need to go back to the data classification, just click in there. And then from here, I want to show two really interesting things. First of all is let's start with the Activity Explorer. Okay, if I click in there, and then I can get a kind of, good understanding what's happening on my organization when it comes to all the, the labels and so on. And then if I go, down in here, really cool, really, interesting. If you can remember on my demo a few minutes ago, I used a user called Diego, okay, and then Diego read a protected file. And, I showed to you Diego couldn't print, couldn't, take a screenshot and so on. Brilliant. Here I have the kind of the confirmation, whatever from that IP address, the user, file read, the user on that date, that time, basically, here's the user read the content, the protected content from that file as well. Okay, all the tracking is in here. Another important information in here is the confirmation. Okay, basically a label was applied by a user called Alex into, or over a file called COVID-19 application and so on. That's the information available from here as well. And then what are the labels the users are using. Okay, that's part one. Part two, really interesting, is the Content Explorer. Of course, in order for you to kind of get information from the Content Explorer, you need to be added into some additional kind of compliance roles and so on. But the beauty of this is in here, we have a list of the sensitive info types. The one I used on my own lab is the credit card numbers. And really cool, I can see here 88, in this case, files and emails, they were classified and protected by the credit card number policy. And now I could go even further and give you the the breakdown number. Okay, basically 32 emails, 35 files from OneDrive, 16 files on SharePoint, and some other information, most likely files on Teams as well. Now if I click on, let's get something random here. If I go over SharePoint, again, if I have the right permission, I could navigate, into the document libraries. For example, in this one here, double click and then eventually, find exactly the files. Here they are. Find exactly the files that are, in this case, protected by the label or the policy called credit card, numbers. MasterCard, credit card, Contoso, and so on. Okay. I believe that's pretty much what I wanted to show. Really kind of, powerful stuff where everything starts under the compliancy.microsoft.com. And then I went first into the sensitive info types. And then later, second step, I went into the information protection. Okay, in here, I created my labels. And then after the labels, I kind of, grouped those labels into the policies. That was the way to publish those policies to the user. And then finally, after doing that, next time when your users are dealing with Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint files, and so on, they will have, based on your policy, the option to manually assign the labels. Or if you have the right policy and the right license, they have the option to, or they can benefit from the option of auto labeling. Thanks to the configuration, the system will identify the patterns automatically and then protect or add the watermark automatically. Anyway, this is what I wanted to share today. Hopefully now you have a much better understanding about the data protection on Microsoft 365. If you enjoyed this video, please give a like, subscribe my channel, and see you next time. Thanks for watching.